Mae Govannen, and welcome my friends to Elven Awakenings, chatting with the Elven Scholar. And now, to your guide to all things Elvish, Dr. Erendil Spindlelis, the Elven Scholar.
Once upon a time, in a forest rich in pine and oak, lived a young elf. He lived amongst his neighbors who were clothed in fur and feather, and found joy and peace with each sunrise, and silence in the evening light of the stars. He spent his days communing with his woodland brothers and sisters, and the nights in contemplation and meditation. Light shone upon him unstained from the mortal world, and he was happy. But as time passed, he became more aware of the land outside, filled with fear and despair, and he knew his time of living in the gentle woods was coming to an end, and his journey as a teacher was upon him. When the morning sun found him again, he walked out of the forest with nothing but the clothes on his back, and strode into the land of man, to teach and to be taught. For it is the way of all teachers that the student so often will be the better master. This is my story, and it is true. My name is Erendil, and I am the Elven Scholar. Mae Govannen, and welcome everyone to the first show of Elven Awakenings, chatting with the Elven Scholar. I am the Elven Scholar, Dr. Erendil Spindlelis, and I am very happy and honored by Heroes and Mortals Radio to go ahead and do the very first in history Elven radio show. This is a live call-in show. So in about a half an hour, we'll be opening up the phones so that you can go ahead and call in. And please, let us know how you feel. Let us know your questions. I'm here to answer your questions. A lot of people know me by my YouTube channel, but I am also a naturopathic doctor. I've been in medical practice over 20 years, and I ran, along with my wife, we ran the state of California's largest naturopathic medical center. We are involved in a lot of holistic healing, but also a lot of spiritual studies, and one of the most important ones is Elven culture, Elven history, and what it is to be an elf. Yes, I am an elf, and I live as one, and this show is all about everything that has to do with elves, whether we're going to talk about culture, history, language, even diet, healing modalities, as well as spiritual concepts. One of the most important things for me is to talk about the spiritual concepts of your inner light, who you are, whether you want to define yourself as an elf or as Fae or Otherkin, pagan or Christian. What is it that is within you that is calling to be reawakened, to be able to live as you truly believe that you are, and to know that you are not alone. There are many, many of us that are out there right now, and we are reawakening. What a time in history that we need Elven light reawakening in the world to help heal what is going on. So that's what this show is about. We're going to be talking about all those different topics. And as I said, here in about a half an hour, we'll be opening up the lines so that you can call in live and let us know how you feel. Ask your questions. I'm here to help teach you, but also to learn from you. That's what we do. We learn from each other. So we're going to be today talking about what is an elf. So let's get started. And today I'd like to start this show off with a very important topic, and to try to explain to you what their show is all about and why we are talking about elves. Most of you are probably going to ask, well, okay, this is a show about Elven culture and Elven nature, but to be honest, what is an elf? So I'd like to go ahead and start the show off with actually touching on one of the most basic subjects, and that's what an elf is. I get that question quite a bit. It's kind of like a vegan. A vegan will often be asked, well, where do you get your protein from? And so we're used to that question, and we try to answer the best we can. Well, it's kind of the same with elves. You know, nowadays people have so many different impressions of elves due to Disney and science fiction and fantasy shows. So we'd like to go ahead and start off with and describe exactly what is an elf. All right, so during this topic we're going to be talking about things like Elven manifestation and meditation, and what do elves do nowadays, and what can we do to be more elves, all right? So this radio show is actually going to be talking a lot about that type of thing. What can you do in your day-to-day life that is elven, and what can we do to express that nature within ourselves, all right? So if you want to be an elf every day and try to do something that is elven. So, all right, so we're going to try and talk about exactly what is an elf. As I said, I've been asked this question multiple times, and at times it was a little difficult to answer because of people's preconceptions, and their notions about what an elf is. Well, all right. The actual term elf goes back thousands of years. The word elf, or its plurals, is what is meant to originally be a human-like supernatural being. Well, in old Germanic mythology, it was actually meant that we were beings with magical powers and supernatural beauty, and really kind of didn't care what went on with other people and kind of stuck to ourselves. But sometimes we were capable of helping or hindering others. It just depended on the situation. Well, all right. So this was all pre-Christian and thousands of years ago. So we were considered supernatural beings, and we would either help or hinder you, or just didn't care. Well, again, this is all before Christianity. Elves were considered gods, or beings that were close to gods. And then Christianity came along and took that and turned elves into demons or devils, okay, and things of that nature. Well, okay, let's go forward a few thousand years, and then Disney gets hold of the beliefs. And we know pretty much what happened there. It turned elves into diminutive, little tiny cartoon creatures, and eventually the Tales of Santa Claus came along and put us in candy corn costumes. Well, and then finally by the 1900s came a very wonderful man, and that was J.R.R. Tolkien. He was a classic historian and had spent a great part of his life not only studying languages, but going deep, so to speak, into the vaults and basements of Oxford and such, and finding books that a lot of people didn't even realize that they existed anymore. And he studied those books, and he found a commonality in the myths throughout a multitude of different countries about elves. And so he spent a lot of his time then bringing the word elf back to its original meaning from what it was thousands of years ago. Because actually he didn't even really like the term elf, but he thought it was the closest he could get to try to explain to people what it was, and to try to repair the damage that had happened through Christianity, through Disney and Santa Claus stories and so forth. All right, but again, he knew that the word elf at least might bring some understanding to people when he tried to describe a particular being. So, according to Tolkien and according to some of the most ancient beliefs on what is an elf, well, the actual answer to that question, we have to go back one step again, okay, over a little bit, and then think about the meaning of life itself. I've talked about this before on my YouTube videos, and it's kind of apropos here to describe this, because if you understand the meaning of life, you'll understand much more about what is an elf. All right? So an elf, as described in the previous videos, for example, by Edgar Casey, when he's talking about life itself, he considered it to be, he actually answered this question as being one of the most oldest questions in human history. And it was, what is the meaning of life? And for those of you who don't know Edgar Casey, he was the sleeping prophet. He was just a photographer. He had no great educational background, certainly not medical. And then one day they discovered that he could go into a meditative sleep. This was in the early part of the 1900s. And when he went into this meditation, someone discovered that if they asked him a question, he was able to answer it from some other source, so to speak. And it became extremely common to ask him medical questions. Okay, how can this be cured? How can that be cured? And it got to be where there are now thousands, and this is at the Edgar Casey Institute in Virginia Beach, Virginia. There are now thousands and thousands of records, readings of them recording what he said when they would say, okay, how so-and-so in another state has such and such an issue. And he would actually describe the condition without knowing anything about them. He would describe it, and he would describe a cure, very often rather unorthodox. And to this day, doctors and scientists from around the world fly out to the Edgar Cayce Institute to study these medical readings, because here's a man with no medical background, and yet people, thousands and thousands of people around the world, have found cures from their illnesses by simply following what he suggested for someone else to do with a similar issue. Well, people started asking him other more esoteric questions. And for myself, because I studied the readings and actually wrote a book on it, and I came across this one reading by accident, and because somebody out of the blue asked the age-old question, what is the meaning of life? Okay, well, drum roll, here we go. Here's this man who seems to be in touch with some higher source within his own being, and he answered it. He said, because God was looking for companionship. That God created this entire fantastic universe, but to have it alone just didn't seem right. And so God created all these beings to share it with, to allow us to co-create with God. In other words, to help create more beauty within this universe through God, but to share it with God, to be a co-creator with God, or in Elven, we say Eru. Well, like I said, we're here for companionship with Eru, but it also, like I said, it goes a step further, because we were bestowed with the ability to co-create. And this is where the definition for Elven comes in, because it's from this bestowal upon us that we have the gifts to co-create, to actually be a part of creation, to co-create with Eru, with God, to bring beauty into this world, knowing that whatever we do comes through us from Eru. So we were created to be co-creators in this amazing universe. So if one definition of elves could be given from my point of view, for me it would be that we have been given the gift to work within this creation in a balanced and centered manner, to continue to add beauty and to build on what Eru, or God, originally started. What an amazing creation. We were created to continue with the work that Eru started, to continue to create and add beauty to this universe. How much more Elven can you be? Okay, what I'd like to do now is to explain a little bit more about that in greater detail, how this applies to us as the original design for elves. As elves, it is our place to make the world a paradise. That is so important with what's going on nowadays. Our task is one in which the laws of creation are able to be manifested in our everyday lives rather than simply in stories and myths. We are here to bring the myths back into memory again, to bring them back alive again, to wake up the old myths. I do and believe indeed that this is possible, and I have witnessed it personally in my life. Now, having said that, how do we do it in a manner that allows creation to express itself as it needs and not simply as how we believe it should be? In other words, it's our job to co-create with this universe and bring the beauty out, but in a balanced manner. Too often man has destroyed whole forests and ecosystems purely because they thought they knew better and could improve upon nature. We are not here for that. As elves, we know that we will not so much as improve upon nature, but enhance it and allow its true potential, to allow it to be revealed. That may be one of the best definitions of manifestation, and this is part of the course that I actually teach at Lambangamore, the Elven School of Lore Masters. It's actually online. It's a course on manifestation meditation and how we can manifest it in our lives. For Elven manifestation, as I've described before in my YouTube videos, there are 4 levels of Elven manifestation, or just in general manifestation as it is. What I'm talking about now is truly the Elven level, level 4, when we allow the universe to work through us, to bring out its true potential, not to manifest it as far as forcing it, but to allow it the freedom to express itself in a manner that the potential that it has is able to be brought out. For many of us, that know the stories of Tolkien's The Silmarillion, the beginning of creation itself, we know that Arda, the world, and the solar system, so to speak, there was a set design for it. And then it was corrupted, and so now it's what we call Arda Mard. Okay, so if it's damaged, it's hurt. And it's always known that part of the elven design was to bring out from Eldamard and to bring it to Arda healed. That's our job, to heal the world and to bring out the true potential that it was meant to have when the song was first sung at the beginning of the universe. We are here to help bring that song back into its full potential. So, again, that may be one of the best definitions of manifestation, to simply allow the true potential of the time or the situation or the individual to be brought into fruition, to let it become what it was always meant to be. And that is within our power. It is given to us through Elu, through God. Okay, I love the stories of Tolkien and all the other stories. For example, The Dark Crystal. And The Dark Crystal has a whole series of books out now on the Age of Resistance and so forth, and it's actually rather apropos to this subject. It seems to fit us well. There's a wonderful phrase in there, and so if you take a few words out here and there and exchange it, but the definition is what it is, about given to what is a Gelfling. All right, their world is called Thra. So just think about that in place of Arda. All right, and here it is. The gifts of Thra were to be shared with one another and to unite what was once fractured, to heal what was ailing, to save what was corrupt, to mend what had been broken apart, to protect what was most important. That was the key to awakening those gifts. It was all part of the same cycle, the same web that connected the Gelfling to Thra, to one another. And that's what an elf is. We are here to heal, to use the gifts, the magic, in the Elven that's called Sarina, that Eru gave us in the original creation. It's still ours. To help heal the world and to help create new beauty and to bring the song back into balance and to let it become what it was meant to be from the very beginning, to allow its true potential with everyone else and to allow them to grow and become what they were meant to be. It is time to return to our destiny. As we see from what's going on in the world today, it is time to wake up. It's always the time to seek for balance in the universe. One of the most important aspects of this is to heal within balance, that we don't force it, that we don't produce what we believe that it should be. That's one of the beauties of being Elven. It doesn't matter whether you're religious or not religious, whether you're Christian or Jewish or Muslim or pagan. An elf is an elf, and we are here to help heal and to create paradise on earth. As elves, we are the stewards of the world, or of Arda, and we are co-creators with Eru, with God, and it is our task to heal the world that is marred and to bring out her true beauty and to add magic to the earth, to bring magic back, so to speak, through our unending love of this earth. Well, the world has shown that in just a few short weeks of man hiding in their homes, that it can begin to heal from the toxicity of human's creation. That is the time when the elves can reawaken. That is now. And all the more, and continue the healing process. So if anything, that's what elves are. We don't have to have pointed ears, and we can dress in medieval or not. You can dress in a suit of clothes or a suit of armor. It is up to you, but we are what we are, companions of Eru, and we are here to co-create and realize Arda the healed, and to realize the earth healed, and to use our special gifts of creativity that we were given by life to help bring that back into myth and magic, and to bring beauty back into the world. All right, I'd like to take a turn now and talk about the other side of the coin, about possibly taking the myths and legends and such a little bit too seriously. So, all right, let's talk about the one that is most prevalent nowadays when it comes to elven culture and studies, and that is J.R. Tolkien. First off, I am a vast fan of him. I think his storytelling, I think his skills were absolutely phenomenal. He, at least in modern days, is the creator of the epic fantasy. We have a lot of other wonderful examples, but I'd have to say he is the father of epic fantasy. But the detail and the analysis and the skill that he put into his world creation was amazing. Now, I use the term world creation like Tolkien created it. That's not actually completely correct. Tolkien himself admitted that he did not feel like he created those worlds, that he was simply writing down history, what happened a long time ago. Some people will believe that, some people won't. I tend to accept that a lot of what he wrote about was true. To a certain degree, okay, this might be a little extreme for some people, but to a certain degree, I believe that he was even something of a seer or a prophet. The things that he's come up with, some of them, actually, there is some scientific evidence and historical evidence for what he talked about. And that will be the topic of another show. But and he's also in very good company. We have Isaac Asimov. We have Jules Verne's. My gosh, the man was amazing. He simply wrote science fictions for back in his day, and yet how much of what he wrote actually came true with Man on the Moon and space travel and such, submarines. He predicted so much. And let us not forget one of my favorite movies today, The Princess Bride. There is a wonderful phrase in that movie that was so predictive of the future. I think they were back in, the 1990s, and yet they really pinned today. I don't need to go into any further description. I think listening to this short sound clip, you'll probably get the idea of what I'm talking about. Here's a listen.
Look, are you just fiddling around with me or what?
I just want you to feel you're doing well. I hate for people to die on bad. You're quick.
A good thing, too.
Were you wearing a mask? Were you burned by acid or something like that?
Oh, no, it's just they're terribly comfortable. I think everyone will be wearing them in the future.
So Tolkien's in very good company, and I have a great deal of respect for him, and I have learned much from him and found much to help with helping others to reawaken the elven soul within them. But again, having said that, I find that there are a lot of people within the elven community that takes what he says so literally that if he said it, it must be true. We have to keep in mind that as wonderful a writer and seer, if we want to go that way, that he was still a man. He was still a human being who colored his writing with his worldview. You know, the things he went through, World War II, and the devastation that he saw to his family, to his people, to his nation, and to the world, obviously heavily influenced his writing. So we have to look through the color and see the truth that's hidden within. And sometimes it's not quite so literal. And again, I find a lot of people doing that. I even find people nowadays making religion around what he spoke. And again, to each their own. One of my most common phrases that I say is, we each have our own path, and we each must follow it at our own pace. So if it works for you, that's great, and vice versa for other people. It's up to you the path you walk. For myself, I learn from him, I've learned from others, and then I move on. And I don't take it seriously. Here's an interesting little tale. You're going to learn as the radio shows continue that I like to do storytelling. I believe that parables are very important, and we'll talk about that again here towards the end of the show today. But this is a story from Lithuania, and a nod to my family that lives in Lithuania to this day. This is a story of Jarates and Kastytis. Yarates was is considered the mermaid queen of the Baltic Sea. She was a beautiful mermaid, and it was her task in life to sit upon a rock in the middle of the Baltic Sea and sing. And her songs were filled with sorrow. But within sorrow, there can be wisdom. You can learn from them. And all the gods and goddesses and all the fairies and elves and all Otherkin would actually travel to where she would sing. And in listening to her, they would gain wisdom, though she sang always in sorrow, because deep down, even though she was doing what she was tasked to do, she sang sorrow because she was so lonely, and it came out in her song. Now from that, the lonely would learn that they were not the only ones in the world and that they could gain some wisdom from that. Well, she did this eon after eon, sitting upon this rock singing her songs. And others would learn from her. Well, there was a mortal, and his name was Castitas. And he too was a very lonely man. He was a fisherman. And he carried on the generations of those before him being fishermen. And each day he would get into his fishing boat, and he would travel out, and he would get his catch for the day, and he would return home alone and sad. But this was his life. This was what he did year after year, decade after decade. Well, his heart reached out, and he didn't know for what. Something was calling him out to the sea. And each day he would travel out a little bit further and then come back later and later, until one day he didn't come back. He had sailed so far from shore that he just kept going. Something in the sea was calling him. And I know this feeling well. Many of those who consider themselves of elven persuasion feel this as well. Well, the days and the weeks went by as he was sailing out there, and one day he heard the singing in the distance, and it enchanted him, mesmerized him, and he turned his boat towards the sound. And as he sailed on, he could see in the distance something sitting upon a rock. And as he got closer, he could see that it was indeed Yarates, the mermaid queen of the Baltic Sea. He immediately fell in love with her, and quite bold, sailed his boat up to her, climbed upon the rock, and took her in his arms and kissed her. And with this kiss, they both fell madly in love with each other. No longer was she sorrowful. She was filled with great joy, and took him, and with her enchantments carried him down to the bottom of the Baltic Sea, to her castle made of amber. And there they were living wonderfully and happily, but unfortunately not ever after. Because the word went out to the gods and the goddesses that she was no longer doing her job. She was no longer singing for others to learn the wisdom that can be imparted by sorrow. Well, Zeus would not tolerate this. So Zeus took a great thunderbolt and cast it into the sea and destroyed her castle of amber. And in the great tumult, threw Castitas through the air, across the sea, and back to the shore. And yet he survived, but he made it back to the shore. And Yarates, in her sorrow, went back to the rock and began singing her songs again. To this day, you can walk along the beaches within Lithuania and look upon the sands and see little bits of amber that still wash ashore, reminding us of Yarates and Castitas. Now, the story moral is usually such that, okay, we must live our lives as we were tasked, as our destiny has foretold us to be. I look at it as a little bit different, that maybe sometimes we can take what is called destiny too seriously, and actually it end up being our fate. Now, what do I mean by that? The difference between destiny and fate. Destiny is the path you choose and strive for and work for. Fate is what happens to you when you just let the tides take control of you and let you just basically you live the life that you were told to live. So Yarates and Castitas, they accepted their fate, but they could have made their own destiny. So sometimes we take what others tell us too literally, when we have in our hands the power to choose and make our own destiny and not be at the hands of fate. So that's it. You're welcome to take a look at the Elven Scholar YouTube channel for more information, as well as look at the Elven School Lemben Gomor. You can find that at elvenscholar.org if you'd like. I look forward to speaking with you all soon again as we delve into the Elven Living series. But our future episodes here on the show, and that's what this show is about, to help you remember who you are, your true inner nature, to remember that you too are Elven, no matter what you may look like on the outside, and that it's time for us to wake up. And that's what I'm here to help you do, and you to help me as well. We'll talk about Elven culture and language, Elven healing, with a story every episode. Okay, we're going to take a short station break, and when we get back, we will be taking callers for our Chatting with the Elven Scholar. This is Elven Awakenings, Chatting with the Elven Scholar on Heroes and Mortals Radio. We'll be right back. When you go to college, you expect the high halls and libraries filled with old books. But much has changed, and in today's world, online schools have exploded in popularity. Please join us at Lemben Gomor, the world's first online college with a nod towards Elven and humankind alike. With Lemben Gomor, you can start a new career or a new life in the holistic health field, learn a new Elven language, study history and culture, or the environment. We believe everyone deserves an affordable education with personalized attention. We provide full certifications in the following fields: home herbalist, Reiki levels 1 through master, nutritionist, first aid, Elven history and culture, Elven languages with Quenya and Sindarin, anatomy, botany, introduction to archaeology, ecology, astronomy, Elven laws of manifestation and meditation, and we also offer full diplomas in the fields of medical herbalist and medical nutritionist. More classes are being added. Many students have found new careers in the above fields. These classes are sponsored and designed by Tree of Life Holistic Wellness Center, which was the largest naturopathic medical center in the state of California. You can pay for your classes outright or join a low-cost monthly subscription, which allows you to take as many classes as you like at one time while you maintain the subscription. This college was founded to give you a chance to expand your horizons while believing in who you are. All classes are certified and are aimed at helping you start a new life and a new career. Adult study programs for both elves and humankind alike, designed specifically for you. You can find us at www.elvenscholar.org. Discover what is inside of you. Be who you are at Lemben Gomor, the Elven School of Lore Masters. All right, we're back. All right, so we're going to go ahead, and this is the time when I have the mic is open. So we encourage everyone to come in and have a chat with me. I'm here, and let's go ahead and give you the phone number. I was a little bit remiss this time since we're brand new at this. So I'd like to go ahead and get you the phone number so that you can go ahead and start calling. All right, so if you'd like to call in and ask me any questions or express any comments, please feel free to do so. We're at 442-227-2187. All right, you can also, if you'd like, if you don't have access to me by phone during this half hour, or if you are out of the country and it'd be a little more expensive to call, you can go ahead also in real time, email me at admin@elvenscholar.org. That's admin, ADMIN, at elvenscholar.org, ELVENSCHOLAR.org. All right, so please feel free to go ahead and contact me at either one of those. We'll go ahead and start taking calls. I've already got a question, so I'm going to go ahead and let you guys. We'll talk about that for a little bit, and if anybody else would like to call, I will be happy to go ahead and cut in at that time. Okay, so one of the questions I get asked quite often is, how do you live your life as an elf? How do you do it on a day-to-day basis? All right, well, all right, again, a little bit about me to kind of help you understand where I'm coming from. As I mentioned before, I'm a naturopathic doctor with over 20 years of medical experience in the holistic field. I'm also a master herbalist, a Reiki master, a certified nutritionist, a reflexologist, And I'm also a software engineer, so I've kind of had my hands in a lot of different areas. And I like to be something more of a, I guess you call it a Renaissance elf. And so I try to study in a lot of different areas. So these have obviously assisted me in how to be able to gain the resources, because my resources were quite large. As an elf, I believe that we are supposed to be eco-friendly, that we're supposed to be here, as I said before, to heal the earth, to heal Arda, to be a part of the healing. So I wanted to be able to manifest that in my day-to-day life, in my real life. So we were blessed. My wife Peggy and I, decided that we wanted to go ahead and save up our resources, because what we ended up doing was, and we still have our home, we actually live down in Southern California, but we still have a home up in Northern California, up in the mountains. We have 158 acres of land up there, and it with a 6.3 kilowatt solar electric system, a deep ground solar electric well. Now, this isn't bragging. This is saying these are some of the things that we have manifested. And like I said, and we'll talk about it more here later in the show, that an upcoming show is going to be talking about manifestation. If you want something in your life bad enough, you can manifest it. You can have it. And we're going to talk about how you can achieve that. And so if you think that, okay, well, you're a doctor, it makes it easy to go ahead and manifest these things. Well, I guess in part that's true. When you're a doctor, very often you can, not all doctors, but you can manifest quite a few different resources. You can have a lot more access to money in your life. But I did not start out as a doctor. If you'll remember the very first story that I gave when this episode started, was that I was an elf living in the forest. And I knew that one day it came time for me to go ahead and leave the forest. And I remember the day that I did this. As I told you, that is a true story. I literally walked out of the forest with nothing but the clothes on my back, because I knew that there was something I had to accomplish. And before the sun set that day, I already had a place to stay, and I actually had work that was bringing in money. Before the day ended, I had a home and I had a job. And from there, I began to exercise the laws of manifestation and to be able to create more and more. And so anyone can do this. Anyone can manifest this in your life. But if you choose not to believe it, if you choose that you can't do this, then it's not going to happen. One of the most interesting things about prophecy is they are self-fulfilling. You can indeed produce a horrible, horrible life if you choose to, or you can believe in something, believe in that inner light within yourself, and you can have it. You can believe enough that it can happen and can come true in your life. And on the other hand, I always like to tell people, beware of wishing. You may very well get what you wish, so be sure that you're wishing for something, as I said earlier in this episode. Make sure that it's something in balance, letting the universe work through you instead of trying to force it. All right, so we manifested. We decided to manifest things. And how did we do that? Just because I was a doctor didn't mean we had a ton of money. Naturopathic doctors tend not to make anywhere near as much as other types of doctors, MDs, ODs, and such. So my wife and I decided this was the thing we wanted to manifest, to build an elven sanctuary. All right, so how did we do that? We sold off of most of everything we had, and we bought an RV, and we moved into an RV park, an RV and mobile home park, and immediately my wife was able to manifest a job as the manager there at the park. She was able to manage it, so all of a sudden we had money coming in, and we were now living there for free. So the money started coming in even more, and so what we did was, because we're living there basically for free, we decided to go ahead and start squirreling the money away. And we saved it for about 2.5 years. And once we'd saved up enough money, we decided it was time to go ahead, and we got the land, and we moved up and began to build slowly but surely, manifesting amazing things along the way. For example, when we were building the home, it's quite expensive to build up in Northern California because the state regulations are quite horrendous. There's not a whole lot of freedom left in the state of California, and for those who live here, I guess you would probably agree with me. Well, here we are. We're building our home, and the county comes in and goes, they don't like the way we're building our road, even though it was by a licensed contractor. And they said, you have to do this and this and this. Well, you have the choice to either gravel it or to pave it. Well, our road was about 1/4 of a mile long, and that was an incredibly long driveway. That was just a driveway to get to the house. And that would have cost probably $9,000, $10,000, $12,000 worth of gravel easily to get that, even just to get a small layer on it, just to meet the county standards. Well, again, believing in manifestation, we were able to, all of a sudden one day, our neighbor had told our contractor that, and this was not about us, just happened to be mentioning it, that there was a mountain of road base, of gravel sitting on their property, and they had nothing to do with it. What had happened was about 20 years prior, the county was putting in some roads and asked if they could dump the gravel on there. And the county said, if we're not back in 10 years, it's yours. Well, here we are 20 years later. They owned all the gravel, and it was massive. Oh, I've got a call, so let's go ahead and take that, and then I'll get back to this story.
Call from Nessido.
You're on the air. What can I do for you?
Hi, this is Nessido. And I was just wondering, how do people connect with nature when they live in a concrete city?
Oh, my, that is a wonderful question. Can you hear me okay?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Okay, so what she asked was, and thank you for the question, it's great. She asked, how can, and this question, believe me, I have gotten so many times. How can you manifest an elven life and live it on a day-to-day basis in a concrete jungle? Is that correct?
Correct.
All right. Believe me, I know this well. When I walked out of the forest, what did I do? I walked into a forest of concrete, and I could either maintain who I was or I could lose myself, which unfortunately so often happens. It's, you know, it's a connection with Zen Buddhism. And when I say Zen Buddhism, I don't mean Buddhism like a religion. Zen is actually called the way, which simply means the way of practicing, the way of practicing meditation or calming your mind. And it's kind of the same thing when people start on the path of Zen. They get all excited and it feels great and they start noticing such vast focus. But it's not long before society begins to pull at them and all of a sudden they lose everything they gained. And it can be the same with an elf suddenly walking around in a concrete jungle. So in answer to your question, what I did and what I'm doing actually right now, because as I was telling in the story just before you called, we were living in Northern California, and we still have the Elven Sanctuary up there. And maybe I'll talk about that in another episode if anybody's interested in how to create an Elven Sanctuary, how to manifest that in your life. But we recently just moved from there. This past May, we moved away from up there because we've been up there for many years, and it was quite a blessing. But unfortunately, well, for those that follow what goes on in California, there are massive fires that go on up there every year, and they're getting worse and worse. And unfortunately, humans are becoming incredibly destructive and damaging up there. So we left. We finally this year decided that the fires were getting too close. And even when the fires didn't, we were blessed. It never touched our home. But living in smoke for 2-3 months of the year was not a healthy thing either. So we actually live somewhat in a concrete jungle right now, temporarily, because we're taking care of 2 very, very large fur babies. We've moved down to Southern California, and I'm not sure how much more concrete jungle you can get than that. I'm assuming you probably live in the city. Is that correct?
No, I'm out in the country.
Oh, good for you.
Yeah. I was just trying to help somebody that lives in the city.
Okay, well, all right. Okay, right to the point. To answer your question, the things that we do now, the things that I did before, and things that I've told so many of my students and patients as well in the past, here we are, we're living in a concrete jungle. We don't seem to be surrounded by too many trees, too much nature. So the good news is in almost every single concrete jungle there is, and I don't know about your friend's case, but there are always parks. There are always forests or national parks or state parks nearby. I recommend, and I've got more recommendations here, but I recommend at a minimum try at least once a week to decompress and walk in the forest. Are you familiar, by chance, since I got you on the phone still, are you familiar with the concept of forest bathing?
No.
Okay, this
No,
is
I'm not.
okay. This is wonderful. I love forest bathing. Forest bathing. All right, it's actually a Japanese concept. It has become so popular over there that the Japanese government now promotes it and requests that their citizens try to do this as often as they can. Forest bathing means nothing more than taking walks in the forest, getting under the trees, walking around, getting out into nature, because one of the worst things that has happened to humans in the modern era is their disconnection from nature. I'm sure you're aware of that because you live in the country, so at least you have some contact, correct?
Oh, yeah. I'm out in the forest every day.
Wonderful. Well, the Japanese government, like I said, did a lot of study into this, and they found actual scientific medical evidence for forest bathing. What they found was that the trees themselves actually secrete hormones and secrete chemicals that actually fall through the air and lands on the ground and interacts with humans and, of course, other animals. As we walk under them, they found that those that forest bathe, in other words, those that, if you can at least once a week, walk under the trees, get into nature, that it actually they've found that it actually treats anxiety, depression, a large number of other psychiatric type disorders. They found that it actually helps. For those that aren't necessarily suffering from those issues, they found that it still calms you, it centers you, because we're back to where we're supposed to be. The trees are actually interacting with us on a hormone level. And they also found that the trees secrete a chemical that destroys the bacteria that is usually out of balance in the area. So it actually makes you healthier. So, you know, they had the right idea back in the 1960s when they said, be a tree hugger. Hug a tree.
Oh, yeah, that's for sure.
Right, hug a tree. And it really does make a difference. I tell my patients this. I said, get out of the house. Get under the trees. And I know with the whole restrictions going on, it's still, you need to get out. You need to get outside. You need to get there. Okay, so that's one thing, forest bathing. Super important.
Okay, so that's pretty much like grounding.
Yes. Oh, wonderful. Great example. I actually tell my patients the same thing, grounding. They did some medical studies on grounding. And for those that don't know what grounding is, it means take your shoes off and walk around on the grass. And I know in the city it's not so easy because dogs poop and pee. So you have to watch where they go. But it does make a difference to ground. They found that grounding on a medical basis, they did some even blood work on patients. Literally before they would, these are patients that weren't feeling too well, they would do blood work at this moment. Then they would literally have them go do about 20, 25 minutes of walking around in the grass with their bare feet, just walking around in the grass. And then they would do blood work right after they did that. And sure enough, that the markers for inflammation went down just in that period of time. There was a significant drop. So grounding is superb because, again, one of the problems with those who want to remember who they are, the elven part of their nature is, and it's a part of the whole process of balance, is grounding. Is to get yourself grounded because, oh my, in an urban environment, it is so toxic. I mean, it's bad enough in the countryside, you know, in this country now, but the city, it's so toxic. So grounding is a wonderful thing to do. So thank you for bringing that up. Other things, grow a garden.
Oh,
You were going to say something?
I'm sorry?
Okay, well, the other, like growing a garden. And yes, I know, absolutely. Growing a garden can be a pretty hard thing to do nowadays, especially with some of the neighborhood HOAs are actually banning them. They're actually city governments that are banning they're banning gardens, saying you can't grow them and share them with your neighbor anymore. All right, but you can still grow a garden in your windowsill. Yeah, I don't care if it's a couple of little flower pots, you know, something that you grow that gives you some kind of connection. There's an old, a lot of scientists have poo-pooed it. Not all scientists have, but there's a theory of something called the Baxter effect, where when we talk to plants, that they actually detect it, they feel it. All right, so I tend to believe that there's some truth to it, and
There is.
Oh, good for you. Absolutely. The act of talking to a plant. Again, more studies. They have found that grounds you, it balances you, It stabilizes you emotionally. It's a give and take between us and the plant kingdom, especially when we recognize it as elves. So growing a garden, even if it's just a little garden, forest bathing, grounding, surround yourself. This is a huge thing. It's something I've practiced for many years in order to keep my sanity in a concrete world when I've had to be around it, is music. Find the music that you feel is elven and play it. Have it be around you. One of the big problems that we have is that it's kind of like learning a language. It's really not that hard to learn a language. It's really hard to keep it. Once you've learned the language, do you stick with it? Do you practice with it? Do you use it? Because if you don't, you're going to lose it. It's the same thing. I can walk around. Go ahead.
Yeah, just like your muscles, if you don't use them, they atrophy.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Let's go. Let's call these our elven muscles. It's the same thing. If we don't use our muscles, if we don't practice it every day, I mean, it's one thing to call myself an elf. It's another thing is, do I do something every day? Do I immerse myself with it? Do I remind myself every day of who I am? Or do I let them out there remind me of who I am or of who they want me to be? All right, so I play music. I read the books that have special meaning to me. I don't care if they're fiction, whether it's Tolkien or C.S. Lewis. It's whether they're true or not. It's the intent. It's the message that comes to us. It's a reminder that even Tolkien said it, that in all myth, in all legend, there is truth. How much there is, sometimes we don't know. But when we read these stories, when we immerse ourselves in the music and the books, we remind ourselves of what the world really is like, and that we can be a part of bringing that back. So I hope that helps a little bit. There's a whole lot more, and I think that's a great idea for another show.
Oh, it does, and and when you do immerse yourself in something, it brings you somewhere else. Like when you're reading a book, you're actually at that place and at that time as you're reading it.
Absolutely.
At least I am.
No. It's not a good book to us if it doesn't transport us somewhere. Absolutely correct. Well, I very much enjoyed your phone call. Thank you so much. I've got another question, so I'm going to go ahead and take that before we get off. But thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, you have a most blessed Elven day. Bye-bye.
You too. Namarie.
Namarie. Okay, well, that was wonderful. That was a great question. Sounds like a great topic for another show. I just got another question in by email from Sean out of Canada, so I thought we'd go ahead and hit that one real quick before we get ready to tie things up. I will try on the next episode to have a whole lot more time for questions. This was my first show with you guys and still working out some of the technical issues. So Sean out of Canada, what he sent me was Mae Govannen. That means welcome for anybody that doesn't know that, and wonderful for the last caller who knew about Namarie. It simply means farewell. All right, what advice do you have for taking your first steps towards Elven manifestation? Outstanding question, Sean. So let's cover that real quick before we head on to story time. All right. Elven manifestation. The next episode, I plan on talking about that in detail, but I can go ahead and list the first one. And I know this is going to sound very airy-fairy because it just seems like such a simple answer. And yes, I agree to most people this can be a whole lot more complex, and that's why we'll have a whole episode on this next time for those that are interested. The first step towards Elven manifestation is belief. It's the faith that it can happen. If you don't believe something can happen, then there's no point in even getting started. There is probably one of my favorite words in all of creation, and it's an Elven word, and it's called Estelle. Estelle, E-S-T-E-L. All right, Estelle. It, for some people, it would translate as faith. That I have faith that something will happen, and what this is, I guess to full definition would be the ultimate faith in Eru, in God, that things are going to work out. It will work out. Sooner or later, things are going to work out, and that's our part here to help it happen, to help co-create with it. Okay, so it's the ultimate faith that things will work out through God. through Eru. But another wonderful word for that would be trust. That I trust that it can happen, that I know that it can happen. So the first step of anything is to believe that it can happen, to know that it can happen. All right, because if you don't believe it, it's not going to matter, and you're not going to get anywhere with it, and you're just going to end up frustrated. And, there was and that is a difficult task. I don't deny that. For those Trekkies out there, the original Star Trek, there was a great episode where they were on a planet, and it was the OK Corral. For those Trekkies out there, you guys or women, you're going to know what I'm talking about. And in the OK Corral, they realized as time went on that, wait a minute, this is not real. Nothing here is real. Nothing is happening. All right? But because they believed it was real, one of their crew members died from a gunshot. And they knew that even though they knew consciously that this was not real, that it was the slightest doubt that it was not real. And all it took was the slightest doubt, and that was enough for this illusionary gun to kill them. All right, so they knew that following the timeline of the OK Corral, they were getting ready to have the big gunfight. All right, and they knew, according to the story, that they had been placed in the characters who got gunned down, and they were going to lose. That was the way the story was supposed to go. They're going to die, and they knew that they would really die. Okay, and Spock told them, "This is not real." And if you just believe that, you're going to be okay. Well, of course, McCoy and Kirk are like, well, that's all great for you, for Vulcan, because you've got the mind strength to do that. The mental discipline. And Spock said, okay, I'm going to go ahead and do a Vulcan mind meld on all of you, and you guys are going to believe no matter what. Kind of like a form of hypnosis. And sure enough, they went before in front of the duel. And the bullets were all fired at them, and they didn't do a thing. They didn't react. Because if you react, it means you believe and that it was real. And they just stood there, and the guns went off, and nothing happened. It's the same with faith. It's the same with trust. It's the same with Estelle. If you don't believe on some level, and I understand, it takes practice. And we're going to talk about this again in a whole lot more detail on the next episode, how you can actually practice and get there, and the techniques and steps that you can do to get there, to do it. All right, so great question, Sean. Unfortunately, I don't have enough time to go into great detail. Please tune in next time, and I will go into great detail about this, and hopefully we'll be able to accept a lot more calls on the next time. All right, so that's going to be it for now for the call-in section. I'm going to go ahead, and we're going to switch to story time. No, this is not a kiddie thing. This is telling lessons in the form of a parable. So stay tuned for a moment, and we're going to go ahead and get right back to telling you a story. It was something that I would like to do at the end of every episode, something to help remind you of who you are. So here we go. All right, it's that time in the show where I like to go ahead and start closing out with a story. I find that stories and parables are very, very important. It is an ancient way of teaching. Whether you read the Bible or other ancient texts, you'll find that it was very common in order to pass on oral tradition and to teach the members of your community. You would tell stories, and your history would be wrapped up and preserved in stories. So for myself, I have found through the years that it's an excellent way of teaching people a particular lesson that I'm looking for. And again, it always teaches me in watching their response and their feedback. So today is going to be the first edition of what I'd like to call Elven Parables. Little stories with wonderful meanings, but I find rather entertaining. This one was actually given to me by the YouTube channel Spirit Science. I hope that you'll go ahead and give them a click and take a look at them. They're a wonderful animated YouTube channel that likes, like I do, to tell stories and give their messages as parables. So again, shout out to Spirit Science on YouTube, and I hope that you enjoy this little story. Today we're going to talk about the parable of the stonecutter. All right, it's an ancient parable, and it's about accepting who you truly are and not letting the mores of society or culture tell you who you are or who you should and shouldn't be. One of the biggest things we notice within the Elven culture today is the amount of negativity and sometimes downright hostility towards those that choose to honor their Elven side, to choose to remember who they truly are, and in our view, is to remember that we are all truly Elven within ourselves, that our spirit, our soul is Elven, and in this culture, that's not always an easy thing. There can be some significant persecution. They'll think that you're crazy or whatever else, and so something we often have had to witness within our lives. So this is a little parable about not letting society tell you what you should and shouldn't be. This is more important, or it is more important, especially within today's society. It is a conformist society, unfortunately. What is important is that you find within yourself what you believe, what is in your heart, and what makes you happy. What path works best for you? And that's something that we have to do by looking within, to find it within ourselves. And a lot of people today choose not to walk their own path because they're afraid of confrontation. They're afraid of rejection. And in the end, it will all stand on fear. As I often say in so many of my videos, that there's only two choices that you make each day. And that's whether you make a choice out of love or whether you make it out of fear. Remember that you're not here to impress anyone. You are here to learn and to grow and to play. It's an old phrase that says that we're the otters of the universe. We are here to live and grow and play and truly enjoy this life. And the only way you can do that is to be yourself, to be who you truly are. So this is a very simple little parable that talks about that, and I hope you enjoy it. And then we'll talk again here in just a minute. Go ahead and listen to the short clip, if you would, from Spirit Science on the Stonecutter.
There was once a stonecutter who was dissatisfied with himself and with his position in life. One day he passed a wealthy merchant's house, and through the open gateway saw many fine possessions and important visitors.
How powerful that merchant must be,
Thought the stonecutter. He became very envious and wished that he could be like the merchant. Then he would no longer have to live the life of a mere stonecutter. To his great surprise, he suddenly became the merchant, enjoying more luxuries and power than he had ever dreamed of, envied and detested by those less wealthy than himself. But soon, a high official passed by, carried in a sedan chair accompanied by attendants and escorted by soldiers beating gongs. Everyone, no matter how wealthy, had to bow low before the procession.
How powerful that official is.
He thought.
I wish that I could be a high official.
Then he became the high official, carried everywhere in his embroidered sedan chair, feared and hated by the people all around who had to bow down before him as he passed. It was a hot summer day, and the official felt very uncomfortable in the sticky sedan chair. He looked up at the sun. It shone proudly in the sky, unaffected by his presence.
How powerful the sun is.
He thought.
I wish that I could be the sun.
Then he became the sun, shining fiercely down on everyone, scorching the fields, cursed by the farmers and laborers. But a huge black cloud moved between him and the earth, so that his light could no longer shine on everything below.
How powerful that storm cloud is.
He thought.
I wish I could be a cloud.
Then he became that cloud, flooding the fields and villages, shouted at by everyone. But soon he found that he was being pushed away by some great force, and realized it was the wind.
How powerful it is.
He thought.
I wish I could be the wind.
Then he became the wind, blowing tiles off the roofs of houses, uprooting trees, hated and feared by all below him. But after a while, he ran up against something that would not move, no matter how forcefully he blew against it. A huge, towering stone.
How powerful that stone is.
He thought.
I wish I could be a stone.
Then he became the stone, more powerful than anything else on earth. But as he stood there, he heard the sound of a hammer pounding a chisel into solid rock, and felt himself being changed.
What could be more powerful than I, the stone?
He thought. He looked down and saw far below him the figure of a stonecutter.
All right. I think for me, the message of this parable is that you are already perfect. You are in a state of perfection. No matter how great or famous or wealthy or powerful you seek to become, you're already everything that you need to be, yourself right now. Who you are, whatever you're going to be in 5 seconds from now, that choice is completely up to you. The key is to becoming aware of your own divinity and knowing that you are what you want to do with it and what you want to be. All right, well, there you go. It's actually one of my favorite little parables, and as you can see by the time this individual was done, they had gone right back to being who they actually were, and that's what made them happiest. If you find that you're elven, be elven. Don't let anybody else tell you. Whatever it is, if it's fae, otherkin, pagan, whatever it may be, but in the end, all that there is in this life is it's what you choose it to be. It's your life to live. It is your special gift given to you. You live in a way that feels right for you. Don't let anybody else tell you how to live. I'd like to leave you with this thought before we end the show. Though you may not all believe it, you are actually all lottery winners at least once in your life. Okay, so what I'm trying to tell you about is to remind you about is the sacredness and purity and preciousness of life on earth. Why are you a lottery winner? Well, when you consider, okay, we're going to talk about a very simple biological issue of when mommy and daddy get together, daddy supplies a lot of sperm to mom. And there actually is about 20 million sperm each. This is the reason for this is because most of them will not make it. Now, woman is designed so that most of them will be destroyed en route. You are only one of those. There was only, in other words, a 1 in 20 million chance that you are here today, that if you hadn't been a slightly faster swimmer, somebody else would have got there first, and it wouldn't have been you. It would have been someone else. So everyone in life has won the lottery at least once. It was a 1 in 20 million chance that you would even exist, and here you are. And to give one more special insight into how precious and rare and sacred life is, we know that from astronomy that there have to date been over 5,000 exoplanets discovered. Exoplanets, what is that? That is a planet that exists outside of the solar system. Due to the current level of optics and scanning scopes and stuff that now exist within today's world, we are able to find thousands and thousands of different planets out there circling around other stars, many, many, many light years from here, sometimes hundreds to thousands of light years from here. So again, there have been over 5,000 exoplanets discovered. Not a single one has been found that can support life that currently exists upon this beautiful blue globe. How rare and sacred life is, and then how even more rare and precious and sacred are you. That you are so rare in this universe, out of all the thousands of planets that they've discovered, this is the only one so far that can support you. One of the best movies I think that actually explains this so well was the one with Jodie Foster called Contact, where she goes and discovers that we are not alone. And yet, in finding that, her dad, actually one of the aliens, but presenting himself to her in her father's form to make it more comfortable for her, went on to explain to her just how precious and rare humans are. So here, take a listen to the little clip from there, and then I'll be right back.
You're an interesting species. An interesting mix. You're capable of such beautiful dreams. And such horrible nightmares. You feel so lost. So cut off. So alone. Only you're not. See, in all our searching, the only thing we've found that makes the emptiness bearable is each other.
happens now?
Now, you go home.
Home? But I have so many questions. Do we get to come back?
This was just the first step. In time, you'll take another.
But other people need to see what I've seen. They need to see.
This is the way it's been done for billions of years. Small moves, Ellie. Small moves.
So remember that. You are already a winner, and you are sacred and precious and incredibly rare. Okay, well, we're going to go ahead and get ready to sign off here. I just wanted to let you know for the next show coming up is going to be about Elven manifestation, about the 4 levels of manifestation and how you can bring this into your life, how you can help co-create the kind of existence for yourself that you would like to see, and to help create the kind of world that you would like to live in, and how you can do it. I'm going to tell you about my examples of what I did and how you can have that in your own life as well. All right. Thank you again, everyone, for listening, and may you all have a most blessed and gentle Elven day or evening. Namarie. Mae Govannen, my Elven brothers and sisters. My name is the Elven Scholar. Come and join me on our YouTube channel, The Gentle Musings of an Elven Scholar, where we will explore all things mythic. We will delve into topics such as elven healing and diet, language, culture, spiritual depths, and practical how-to videos on living as an elf in today's world. Let's find that balance within our own true inner light. Thank you, my friends, for watching, and I hope you will take this journey with me.